Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of JoyBaking.com. Today we're going to make a coconut cake. And this is made with a white butter cake. It's going to be filled with a tangy lemon curd, and then we're going to cover the whole cake with lots of white, fluffy 7-minute frosting, and then garnish it with dried coconut. So the first thing we're going to do is our white butter cake. So preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius, and you will need 2 9-inch, that's 23 centimeter, round cake pans. And this one I'm using, it has sides of about just a little shy of 2 inches, which is 5 centimeters. And then what we're going to do is butter and flour our pans. So I like to use melted butter, so just melt a little bit of butter in a saucepan, and then I use a pastry brush, makes it nice and easy, and just do bottom and the sides, like so. And then we want to flour this, so I just have a little bit of flour and just put it in there, and then just kind of, so you can see what I'm doing, just kind of coat the whole pan with the flour, and that will prevent our cake from sticking. And then normally I do this over the sink. It's going to get a little noisy. You want to tap the flour out like so. And then just to make doubly sure that our cake doesn't stick, I'm going to use a round of parchment on the bottom. You don't have to do that. It's not absolutely necessary. So now, if you have a stand mixer like I have here, use your paddle attachment, or you could just use a hand mixer for this as well. And you need to start with 1 cup, 225 grams of butter. Have that at room temperature. As you know, I like unsalted butter. I prefer the flavor, but you can use salted, whichever one you personally like. And then I'm just going to beat this just for like a minute, just until it gets nice and creamy and smooth. It just takes a minute. If your butter was a little cold, you might have to beat it a little more. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my mixer on low to medium-low speed, and I'm going to gradually add 1 3/4 cups, which is 350 grams of granulated white sugar. So I'll just add a little to start here. Okay, I do it that way because it's a large amount of sugar, and then it beats in faster if I do it gradually. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to beat this on medium-high speed, probably about 3 minutes, until it gets nice and light and fluffy. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add my 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract, because then the vanilla will just flavor that butter sugar mixture. Okay. Okay, we're done. As you can see, this is what it should look like. It's lightened in color, as you can see, and there's lots of air, really nice and light and fluffy. And when you're making cakes, you want quite a bit of air beaten in with a butter cake. That gives you a really nice light texture, which we want. So now what we're going to do is add 4 large eggs, and have your eggs at room temperature, because room temperature eggs will mix into your batter a lot easier than if they were cold. So we're just going to do it one at a time. So add 1, be 20, 30 seconds, and then keep adding the rest. And scrape down the bottom and sides of your bowl as much as you need to. quick stir. Next egg. Looks good. I'll just give it a quick stir. If you do find that your batter has curdled a little, sometimes if your eggs are a little cold, that'll happen. But don't worry, once we add our dry ingredients, it'll smooth right out. Or you could try beating it just a little more, and that sometimes helps as well. So now, for our dry ingredients, in a separate bowl, I have 2.5 cups, 325 grams of all-purpose flour. You may know that as plain flour. And to that, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons, 8 grams of baking powder, and 1/2 teaspoon, 2 grams of baking soda, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I like to use kosher salt. It has a milder flavor, which I like. Now, if you use salted butter, I would probably just leave out the salt. Now, you could sift your flour mixture or just really give it a good whisk, which I'm doing here, because you want to, 1, it aerates the flour, and 2, you're making sure that that baking powder and baking soda is mixed in, because otherwise you can get little, sometimes clumps, which will be bitter tasting, which we don't want in our cake. And the other thing you will need is 1 cup, 240 milliliters of buttermilk. Again, have that at room temperature. Now, I know some people can't find buttermilk, so you can make a really great substitute. Just take 1 cup, 240 milliliters of just regular milk, have it at room temperature, stir in 1 tablespoon of lemon juice or even a vinegar, and just let it sit at room temperature about 10 minutes, and you have your own buttermilk. And I like to use buttermilk here because it gives a really nice moist and tender crumb to our cake. It's something a little different than just regular milk. So now what we're going to do is add the flour in 3 additions and alternate that in 2 additions with the buttermilk. So just add, let's eyeball it here, about 1/3. And gradually beat this in because we don't want that flour up in our face. So just low speed. Okay, and then I'm going to add about half of the buttermilk. Okay, I'll add a bit more flour. The rest of our buttermilk. And finally, the rest of our flour. You may wonder why we do it all in stages, but if you added all that flour at once and then all that buttermilk, you'd be mixing and mixing and mixing. And the more you mix, the more gluten you get, and then a tougher cake. So if you do it in stages like this, it keeps that cake nice, our cake will be nice and moist and tender, which is what we want. So now we're going to divide our batter. So you can see I still have a little flour on the side, so I'm just going to give that a quick stir, make sure we got it all mixed. Okay, so now we're going to divide. Now if you can just, you can just eyeball the amount, or if you have a scale, it's really great. But of course your pans need to weigh the same amount, otherwise it gets a little complicated. So make sure you weigh your pans before you put the batter in to make sure that they both weigh about the same. I'm going to go with that, but I am going to weigh just to make doubly sure, because you want your cakes to have about the same amount of batter so they bake in the same amount of time. So I'm a little off, so about 10, okay. Just a little, it wouldn't make that much difference, but since I'm using scale, might as well be really accurate. So now, you can just use the back of a spoon, or I'm using one of these little offset spatulas. Just spread your batter out. Now when we bake our cakes, keep in mind everyone's oven is a little different, bakes in a little different time. Some are running hot, some are running a little cool. So, you know, I would say always check, whatever the baking time is, check your cakes of even a few minutes before that, because, you know, you don't want to over bake them and then they tend to be a little dry, which we don't want. So we're going to bake these. I find in my oven about 28 to 30 minutes. They'll get a really nice golden brown crust, and of course when your toothpick goes in the center it should just come out clean. Okay, that looks pretty good. And try to space your pans a little bit apart so the air can circulate around both of the pans. Okay, our cakes are done. Don't they look gorgeous? So just place your pans on a wire rack like this. And what we're going to do is let them cool in the pan for about 10 minutes. And when we come back, I'll show you how to remove them. Okay, now to take our cakes out of the pan, the first thing I do is I'm just going to lightly butter the rack that I'm going to put the cake on, because we don't want it, as it cools, we don't want it to stick. So let's do that, and then take rack, first, sorry. Just take a knife or an offset spatula and just run it around the inside there, just to make sure that our cake isn't sticking. You don't want to leave half the cake in the pan. And then just flip like so. Hopefully it should come right off. And then if you use parchment, just peel that off gently. So, and then we're going to flip it onto that buttered rack. And we do this helps to prevent the cakes from cracking as they cool, and then we butter it so that it won't stick to the rack. So what I'm going to do is let these cool completely, and then when we come back, we will start our 7-minute frosting. So now we'll start our 7-minute frosting. Now this is considered like an old-fashioned frosting, and it's meringue. Really, that's what it is. It's egg white and sugar. Now, it doesn't tend to store very well. It tends to get a little granular. So it's best to make and then frost your cake and serve it on the same day. Although we are going to add a little corn syrup, which helps to prevent the sugar crystallization. Plus, it kind of gives it the frosting like a marshmallow flavor. Very good. So you will need a saucepan of simmering water and a stainless steel bowl. And you will need 3 large egg whites, that's 90 grams, and have your egg whites at room temperature. And 1½ cups, 300 grams of granulated white sugar. And like I said, we're going to add just 1 tablespoon of light corn syrup, prevent that sugar crystallization. You could use a golden syrup. And then 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar, because that will help stabilize the whites. Cream of tartar is usually found on the spice section of your grocery store. Now, if you can't find it, then you can just add a little bit of salt. And then I'm adding, just to thin the whites out, the egg whites out, I'm adding 1/4 cup, 60 milliliters of cold water. Now, you will need a hand mixer because, like I said, it's going to be at least 7 minutes, sometimes longer. If it's a humid day, it can take even longer. I mean, you could use a wire whisk, but you'd have to have a really strong arm. So I'm just going to beat this on low speed just to mix everything together. Okay, that's about, we just want to get it all mixed. Now, just get that water simmer. And you might want to check your water periodically when you're you're beating this, just to make sure it's at a simmer. So now I'm going to beat for about 3 minutes on medium-low speed. Okay, that's been about 3 minutes. This is what you're looking for. It's got kind of like whipped cream, a little thicker. Make sure you, just as you're doing it, scrape the sides to make sure there's no sugar crystals forming there. So now what I'm going to do is turn it on, my mixer on high speed, and beat for about another 3 minutes until it's really thick and forms soft peaks. Okay, so I'm just going to take that off of the heat. And that was about 6 minutes, or this is what you're looking for. As you can see, nice soft peaks, it's really thick. Now, depending too on how hot your water was, you may need to do it a little longer. Now, I'm going to add some vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. Now, if you wanted to add like maybe a little lemon flavor, you could add instead some pure lemon extract, or even, because it's coconut cake, you could add some pure coconut extract. But I'm going to use vanilla here. So what I'm going to do is continue to beat this for about a minute or so. So I have a total of about 7 minutes, and until it's really nice and thick and of spreading consistency. Okay. Looks about right. My arm tells me it's been a while. Our arm will get a nice exercise. Now, now we can very nicely spread this on our cake. So when I feel this, it's still quite warm because we did do it over simmering water. So I'm going to put this aside and let it cool down just a bit, and then it also will thicken up. And when we come back, we will assemble our cake. So now we're ready to assemble our cake. So we have our 2 cooled cakes, and our frosting's nice and cool and thick, as you can see. It does look like marshmallow. And you will need 3 cups, that's 150 grams of dried coconut. Now you can use sweetened or unsweetened dried coconut, either one, and shredded, flaked, which, whatever your preference. I'm actually using unsweetened because I kind of think we got a lot of sweetness and everything else. So, and then you will need 1 cup, 240 milliliters of lemon curd. Now you can buy your lemon curd, or I like to make it. And there is a recipe along with the video on the site for that. And what's great is you can make your lemon curd up to a week in advance and put it in the fridge. And actually I find it better if you make it a few days in advance. So that way we don't have too much to do. So now what we're going to do is assemble. Now we have to cut our cake layers in half. Now, what I like to do is, you don't have to, but these cake circles or cardboard cake circles, you can get them at cake decorating stores or like Michael's Joann's. And I just like to put that under the cake. And that way, if you want to lift it up, I mean, you got something that you can use. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just so it sticks a little here. Move around. And then, now if you don't have this, you can just kind of move the cake as you're cutting it. You will need a large, like a serrated knife or a nice straight edge. And I like to use a long one that's, you know, that way you can get all the way through the cake. And then just use your knife and do about halfway, just kind of eyeball. And what I do is I cut in, you know, a few inches, and then I keep turning and cutting. As you can see this. So if you didn't have a turntable, just keep, you know, turning your cake. And just work it all the way around, and hopefully you'll meet up. And then just kind of work your knife right through the whole cake. And hopefully we'll have a nice even. Divide it in half. Yeah, see, as you can see. That way, if you do it that way, you get more of an even. So now, you could decorate your cake right on there. I'm going to do it on here just to show you. Take your cake pedestal, and then what I like to do is just put some either, you can use wax paper, parchment like that. So that way if we slop, which I tend to do, you can just, you'll slop on the paper, and you can just take that out after. So what we're going to do, I've already done this, so we'll take one layer, put it just like so. And then, now if you wanted a little more coconut flavor, you could sprinkle a little coconut milk on there, but I find this is more enough. So I'm going to take, and maybe like about 1/3 of a cup, and I'm just going to eyeball. I mean, you could use. And then, because what we want is a thin layer of lemon curd on here, and then just spread it out. I find the lemon curd adds a lot of flavor, and it kind of cuts the sweetness of the frosting and the cake. So there we have that. And then I'm just going to sprinkle with a couple tablespoons, just a little thin layer of coconut, like so. I mean, you use as much or little as you want. And then I'm just going to continue, do the same thing for the next layer. And our top layer. So just kind of want to make sure that that's even. And now for our frosting. So, doesn't that look gorgeous? So, I'm just going to work this around and down the sides. And then we can put, again, as much or as little coconut as you want. Doesn't that look gorgeous? Nice party cake. And then you can just kind of put it on. That's why it's good to have that parchment paper, because if you're like me, you make a little bit of a mess. So I'm just going to, you get the idea. So once you're done that, then what you can do is simply pull out your parchment and, fix up the sides if you need be. And you're ready to go. Now you could, this will hold in the fridge for, a few hours. And I mean, you can store the leftovers overnight. Like I said, you may find a little bit of your frosting may harden a little on the outside crust. You might get a bit of a crust, and it may get a little granular, but it's still great. So now, excuse excuse my mess there. So now, I usually like it to sit a little bit before I cut it, but we will cut it now and give it a try. So, it's a big cake. I got that, see if I, okay, there we go. Oh, doesn't that look gorgeous? That fluffy white frosting, that 7-minute, is really a nice, a really great frosting. The looks and the taste. So I gotta get some of that. Oh, I really like that. Got that really fluffy marshmallowy frosting, the dried coconut, the lemon curd, the buttermilk cake. I mean, what's not to like? So try it and enjoy. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.